Hi, we are going to be talking about air pressure today, but we're going to be doing it in a little bit of a unique way, and because I teach at a Christian school and I can do things like this, we're going to do a demo that will be about air pressure and will apply to air pressure at the end. But first, we're going to apply this little demo to your spiritual selves, because that matters even more than your understanding of air pressure. So, I gave you, actually, you cut them up yourself because you're helpful like that. You have strips of paper there. Not necessarily for others to see. I will not read them out loud to identify you, but I want you on a couple of strips of paper to write one thing on a piece of paper that you continue to struggle with. It might be a habitual sin, it might be an attitude problem, it might be a hurt in the past that you just can't get over, some kind of issue that continues to come up in your life and you're like, that's there again. And I'm not going to read them out loud, we're not going to embarrass you, this isn't public confession time. But write something on a strip of paper that falls into that category in your life, and I'll give you a moment to do that. Okay, so I wrote some on this strip of paper, and you wrote some, and we wrote whatever we wrote. I'm not going to necessarily read them out loud, but these strips of paper represent things that we are having a hard time with, things that we're struggling with in some way. We are Christians, all of us here. I know that all of you at some point have come to terms with Jesus and what he's done for your life. And there are probably things that you would look at in the world, and other people fall into sin in certain ways, and other people give in to temptation in certain ways. And you're like, no, see, I'm not going to do that because I'm a Christian, right? Like, you hear about other people your age who are, I don't know, sleeping around and getting pregnant, or you hear about other people your age who are dealing with drug issues, or you hear about other people your age who are in some kind of violent situation and they're in jail for something, and you're like, yeah, so I can't do that. See, I'm not like that. And if this egg represented, I don't know, things that you don't think you could do that fall outside of your struggles, right? You have your struggles, but they're not like those people, right? They're not like that. See, that can't come in to be a part of who I am. If this jug represents who you are, you're like, no, see, I don't do that stuff. I don't do drugs. I don't sleep around. I don't hit people when I'm angry, because I'm not like that. That's not the kind of person I am. See, I can't do that. That won't fit into me because I'm a Christian. But see, you're not perfect. And this is a strip I wrote. I've got things I deal with, and I'm just going to put this in here because this is, sadly, a part of who I am. And I wish it weren't, but I've got this other thing too. And yeah. I deal with that. I struggle with that. The Lord is working on me in that area. And this came from one of you, and I don't know what it is. It doesn't really matter. For the sake of the demonstration, it's just something you deal with, right? And me too. And you too. And here's things that we all have issues with, and at some point, sometime in our life, in our days, we run across this again. But lest we say, oh, but I'm not like that person, because see, I still don't do what they do. I'm not like that. I'm better than them. I have this, but they've got that. I just wanted to take a moment and see that sometimes, where's my box of matches? There it is. Sometimes the things that are in our life, Satan uses those, and he will take the little struggles that we still have. Oh, whoops. See, that wasn't supposed to go quite so fast. He takes the little struggles that we have, and he will use them for his own. That's supposed to light on fire, not just puff. He will use them for his own effects. Oh, please, Lord. Light on fire. See, I'm going to have to edit this. He will use them, light on fire. Okay, so the fire Satan uses to tell us that we are not who we are. And then the world's pressures around us creep in. And before you know it, we've done the things that we said we would never do. So we have to make sure, that worked finally, we have to make sure that we are on our guard and that we are confessing our sin to the Lord and keeping our bucket empty. Dealing with the sin as soon as it becomes an issue and coming to the Lord and saying, hey, I've got this. Can you take this away from me? Because Satan uses those little things to lie to us and to push us towards bigger issues in our life. So deal with the little sins and deal with the little struggles you have as soon as you are aware of them. There you go. The egg that didn't fit in the bucket eventually went in the bucket. Why did the egg that didn't fit in the bucket eventually get in the bucket? Yes.
Because when you put fire in, it burned all the oxygen inside, sucked the egg down.
You're almost right.
Oh.
Somebody help her out. What else is going on in there? I'm going to put a lid on my bucket so that it doesn't smoke like crazy. And a little what?
The fire.
Okay. So Maria's close. Why did the egg go in the bucket? You said it sucked the egg in. There in the discussion of air pressure, there really isn't such a thing as suck. Suck doesn't exist. But we use that word, okay? The egg was being pushed on by air pressure. But when I set the egg on top the first time, the air pressure was not enough to push it in the bottle. But when I set the egg on there the second time, the air pressure was enough to push it in the bottle. Why?
Because it was the same before both sides, but then second time when it was burning up the oxygen, it was not. Yeah.
You keep thinking about there being oxygen or there not being oxygen, and you're thinking along the right lines, but that's not the whole picture. So when we light a fire inside the bucket, okay, what happens to the temperature of the air inside the bucket?
It heats up.
What happens to things when they get hotter?
They rise.
They rise and they expand, right?
Yeah.
Things that get hotter get bigger. So the air in here expands. Well, does the glass jar swell as the air is getting bigger? No. Well, so if the glass jar is rigid and the air is getting bigger, where does the air go?
Around the egg.
No. Well, the
No.
egg's not there yet. Where does the air go as the fire is burning? It disappears. Out what?
It burns. It burns out.
Well, no, it doesn't. See, the oxygen doesn't cease to exist. It is bound with other things, and we wind up with carbon dioxide. It's still the same stuff. But as the air gets hotter and the glass jar is rigid, if the air is getting bigger, but this container can't swell, but there's a hole on top, where does a lot of the volume of the air go?
Rises out.
Rises out the top. So I have less air. It's hot air. It's less dense. There's fewer particles of air in the bucket. Now I put an egg on there. And so I draw this. Here's a really bad egg. Okay. I draw the air, put the egg on there. Now, there's air pressure all around the egg, pushing on the egg from all directions, just like there's pressure pushing on you from all directions. Is there pressure pushing on the bottom of the egg? Yes, but less, right? So if all of my air pressure vector arrows are about that size around pushing on the outside of the egg, underneath the egg there are smaller vectors. There is still air pressure, but there's less air pressure. So the egg is being squeezed from all directions still, but it's being squeezed less from inside the bottle. And then the air inside here cools. Now, if the air shrunk, if the air expanded when it got hot, you put the egg on, the fire goes out, what happens to the volume of the air in here? Now the air is cooling off, so it does what? So it shrinks. So now there's even less air inside because the volume of the air is shrinking, right? And so now these pressure vectors get to be even smaller. There's very little air pressure inside the jar. There's still some, but not nearly as much as there is outside. So what happens to poor old egg? He gets pushed from the air into the jar. So the jar doesn't suck the egg in. The atmosphere around the egg just pushes so much harder that the egg has to move according to air pressure and go inside. Pretty cool, huh? So there's a little demo about air pressure and about dealing with your little struggles before the war.